What's going on, everyone? Gareth here, FCP Euro. Welcome back to another DIY video. Today we're going to be installing this Hotchkiss sway bar kit on this E46 M3 on the lift behind us. So, in this car's case, the front sway bar is pretty rotted away, actually. Underneath the sway bar mounts, there's not much material left. We actually did a full diagnostic video talking about sway bar noises. You can learn more about that there, but the fix to this problem is the front sway bars have to be replaced. The owner of this car has chosen to go with a Hotchkiss sway bar kit, which we also happen to offer here at FCP Euro, which includes an upgraded front sway bar and rear sway bar. So it's a three-way adjustable in the front and a two-way adjustable in the rear. Technically, it's more than three-way and two-way, but we'll get into that a little bit later. The kit comes with all that you see here, minus the adjustable front sway bar links, which he has also chosen to go along with the installation on this. Again, those parts are also available here at FCP Euro. Now that we talked about what we'll be installing, let's talk about the tools we're going to need to do this job, and then we can go ahead and jump right into it. Because of this aftermarket sway bar kit, some of the metric sizes are different than the BMW sizes, which are DIN standard. You'll need 13, 15, 16, 17, 18 millimeter wrenches. Oh, and also a 14 millimeter wrench. And then for your sockets, 13, 15, 16, 17, 18, deep, shallow, some impact if you have it, a 6 millimeter Allen, extensions, your typical assortment of ratchets. Probably want a hammer on hand, so dead blow is great for that. Torque wrench that can do 65 newton meters of torque. And of course, if you have power tools, that's gonna make the job go by a little bit faster. And yeah, flashlight's not a bad idea to have either. Can't be dark under the car. These are the tools you're gonna need to do the job. Now we talked about that, let's go ahead and get right into it. All right, first thing, we're gonna go ahead and remove the front wheels. Reason being, we need to disconnect the sway bar links from the struts. So this car has an aftermarket Miley HD sway bar link. Normally it would be a 16 millimeter counter hold and a 17 millimeter nut. In this case, it's still a 16 millimeter counter hold, which you can do with a wrench, and a 16 millimeter nut. So slightly different sizes. It's going to totally depend what sway bar links you have or don't have. And we're going to be removing the sway bar links with the sway bar, so no need to disconnect it from the sway bar itself, just right here from the tab on the struts. All right, from here, we're gonna go ahead and raise the car up and remove the splash shield. All right, so here we have our splash shield. This car is missing a couple of screws, but they're all 8 millimeter self-tapping screws, so we'll just go around and remove them. And if the car you're working on is missing it, then this doesn't count, but you should also probably replace it. And if your car is missing the screws, you should also replace those as well. From here, we now have access to the mounting brackets for the sway bar. It's held on with 4 13 millimeter screws, so we'll just go ahead and remove those. We remove these nuts, it is going to cause the sway bar to start drooping down. So at least on the last handful of nuts, you'll want to go ahead and hold on to the sway bar to prevent it from crashing down. So the Hotchkiss sway bar kit comes with its own sway bar mounts and brackets. You'll actually see that the brackets have a Zerk fitting. That is for future servicing. But before we install these for the first time, we're going to want to head and lubricate the inside of these bushings. That'll prevent wear and noise and all sorts of other things that we don't want to happen from happening. So we're just using the included lubrication, and then we will slip the bushing over the sway bar like so, and then we're going to use the rest of the lube on the other bushing as well. We don't need to put any kind of lubrication on the outside, so don't do that. There we go. Now we can toss the gloves that you used to put the lubrication on, so you don't spread that everywhere, and get new gloves. The Hotchkiss kit comes with these little pieces of metal reinforcements that go on the sway bar mounts on the chassis side. They do not need to be welded in place like we did in this application, but that was done before. You could choose to weld it in place, you can choose not to weld it in place, but either way, these little brackets do need to go in place first because that now acts as a flat bottom for the new sway bar mounts. But installation is pretty much the reverse of what we did to remove it. Just slip the sway bar back up over the top of the control arm and tie rod. We already put the new brackets on. I'll thread one nut on just to hold this side in place. The only thing I would say is when you make sure that the sway bar is in location, make sure that the sway bar is sitting below your ABS wheel speed sensors, brake pad wear sensor, and the brake hose. You don't want it up and over because then you'd have to pull the sway bar out in order to fix that. So make sure the sway bar is sitting between the control arm and those cables and brake lines. It's a 13 millimeter like before to tighten down the sway bar bracket to the sway bar mounts. And we will torque those down to spec here in a moment. Torque spec on the nuts that holds the sway bar mount brackets to the mounts on the body, 23 newton meters, 13 millimeter drive. So I'm gonna go ahead and put one end of the sway bar link onto the side of the strut here. And the initial option here is I'm just going to choose the softest setting for the front and the rear. I'll let the owner of the vehicle play with it as they wish. But really important, in my opinion, to use adjustable sway bar links with a adjustable sway bar with holes, because as you move the position further forward into the stiffest position, that is going to push the sway bar down, which is going to put preload on the suspension, and you want to be able to remove any preload from the suspension as you adjust the stiffness of the sway bar. Now, I did say these are three-way adjustable and two-way in the rear, but technically that's not true. There is some fine tuning that you could do here. Since there's 3 holes on this side and 3 holes on the other side, you could choose a soft setting on this side, choose the middle setting on the other, and technically that is a slightly different spring rate than if you went soft on both. So again, there's some fine tuning that you could do here. Most times you'll either choose the softest setting, the middle setting, or the stiffest setting. But it's always best to start with the softest setting, and then you can add spring rate as you wish. But again, technically it's 6-way adjustable, not 3-way adjustable, and 4-way adjustable for the rear. Or actually, no, I'm sorry, 3-way adjustable for the rear. The size of our counter hold is a little bit different on these sway bar links. It's 15 millimeter counter hold, and it's a 17 millimeter nut. And now we're just doing the same process over here on this side. So I went ahead, I have 2 pole jacks underneath the control arms with the suspension at ride height. So essentially removing any preload from the sway bar. It is at a neutral position here. So at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and tighten down the jam nuts. We're gonna use a 13 millimeter wrench and an 18 millimeter wrench to tighten these jam nuts down. So it's a 13 millimeter counter hold on these style sway bar links. And that's just gonna lock the length of the sway bar link into the position that it's currently at. Again, this is to ensure that there's no uneven preload on the sway bar. And again, that length adjustment is gonna be super critical if any change is made to the sway bar in terms of its stiffness, because you wanna make sure that you don't unevenly preload the sway bar or change the preload of the sway bar. Torque spec for the sway bar end link nuts is 65 newton meters. So first thing we need to do for the rear suspension is detach the bracket that holds the sway bar link to the upper control arm. You can't see it on video really, so we have a quick little shot that shows you where they're located, but it's a 17 millimeter hex on top, it's a 13 millimeter nut below. I know, kind of a strange combination of sizes. But I'm gonna release the sway bar links first with the bracket, because we do need to reuse the bracket. So 17 and 13. Next up, we have these 5 millimeter Allen bolts we need to remove. And then next up, we need to lower the sway bar down and out. So it's gonna be easiest to do it from the right side first, and then we'll do it from the left side since the exhaust is in the way. To make my life a little easier here, you can wiggle this out with the bracket attached, but the bracket is holding me up, so it's a 13mm bolt, a 13mm nut. We'll pull the bracket off. And that'll give us some flexibility that we currently don't have. The bracket keeps getting stuck on everything. Since we already moved that other bracket, we need to take this off. So again, 13mm, 13mm. And the rest of this, including the brackets, bushings, etc., those are all going bye-bye. First thing I'm going to do is assemble our new sway bar links with the sway bar link bracket that goes up on the control arm. It sits in there like this. This has a spherical rod end at the upper portion, which is actually going to be super useful for us because the first thing we're going to do is get these links installed, and then we'll have plenty of articulation and movement to get the sway bar in place. So, unfortunately, you can't do that with the factory sway bar links because they have to be pre-attached to the sway bar. These give us a little bit more flexibility. So these have been kind of crushed a little bit because of the rubber bushing that's normally in that upper sway bar bushing. So go ahead and take our original bolt and we'll take the nut. Again, these are 13mm, 13mm. Torque spec will be 23 Newton meters. I'm going to do the same for both. You could opt to replace these brackets if you wish. These are in okay shape, even though there's a little surface corrosion. And again, this illustrates my point. Even though we tighten that down, we can move that any which way that we want. And while we're here, I will lubricate our new sway bar bushings, which come with the kit, and install the sway bar bushings on the sway bar. Again, we're using that same lube that comes with the kit. Slip the bushing on over these flat spots there. And this is the orientation the sway bar will be facing the subframe. So this is the upright position. This is how the axles clear the sway bar once it's in the car. Again, we'll throw these gloves out to not make a mess and get new ones. And then for the retaining brackets, they come with Zerk fittings just like the front do, so you can service the sway bar bushings over time. Make sure the Zerk fittings are pointing in the downward position. So we've done all our pre-assembly that we need to do here. First, we're going to install those sway bar links on the car, and then we'll go ahead and slide the sway bar in and bolt everything up. So the way that we're going to install these brackets is we're going to install it with this little ledge facing outward. Reason for that is we need this to be able to articulate back and forth. It's going to really favor the inside more than the outside. We don't want this to get in the way. And we are going to have to adjust the height of the sway bar links to make sure that the sway bar is not going to touch the axles. I can already tell you in the fully collapsed position, they're too short. So I'm just going to go ahead and thread this down for now. And I'll make that adjustment once the sway bar is in position. Again, I'm going to have this portion of the mounting bracket facing outward. So as we're looking for it, it's going in like that. Torque spec on these 13mm nuts, 23 Newton meters. I think you're probably going to see that common trend so far in this. Okay, next up, we're going to go ahead and slide the sway bar in. So we're going to loop it over the exhaust first, like so. And then we're going to move it up into position. And take the hardware provided by Hotchkiss for the brackets and get it started by hand. Couldn't really do any talking getting the sway bar onto the rear subframe. Issue I ran into is the fitment of the bracket is super tight, so the top and bottom bolt To get it to go, I actually ended up using a slightly longer lower bolt, an 8x25 or 8x125 by 25, to have enough threads to get it started. The bolts that came with it, that one bolt was just simply too short, and the way that the bushing gets compressed, it wouldn't work any other way. So had to make do with a slightly longer bolt. You might have a different situation. It could be dependent on subframes, who knows, but that's the issue I ran into. But I got them all in there, torqued to 23 Newton meters, and then next up, we'll go ahead and secure the sway bar links. So next up, we need to make sure that the sway bar is not going to come into contact with the axle. So right about there is gonna be more than enough room. So I'm gonna lower our adjustable sway bar end link down to the sway bar. I'm gonna take the bolt that's included, drop one of the pieces of hardware as is tradition. You want the big washer on the outside. We use the small washer and the locking nut on the inside. We'll kind of get those in there and started. We'll lower our jam nut down. We'll tighten that down as well once we get the other side situated. 14 millimeter and 17 millimeter ratchet. We're gonna go ahead and tighten that sway bar link bolt down. And again, I set this rear sway bar to the softest setting. And lastly, all we need to do is put our splash shield back into place. And again, this was just held in with a bunch of 8 millimeter self-tapping screws. And then after you have the car back down the ground, make sure you torque the wheels to 120 Newton meters of torque, assuming you have factory wheel hardware. And then make sure you take the car for a test drive and ensure that there's no noises or any unintended weird things that are happening. There shouldn't be. It's a relatively straightforward installation. The rear is a little bit more difficult than the front, but overall very straightforward. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments, leave in the comment box below. If you like this video, hit the like button. And as always, we have a ton of content on the way, so hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on what we have going on. And as always, we'll see you for the next one. Thanks for watching.